Hare Krishna. Is there anything beyond Nirvana? We suffer so much. Life is so difficult. Every day there's so many troubles, so many issues to deal with in our minds, in our bodies, and everybody else, in the world, and the weather. It's just so much trouble all the time. The wise person naturally seeks to end all suffering. You'd be a bit foolish, of course, to not try to seek to end all suffering. So, throughout history and throughout time, there has been this search to end all suffering, and usually this means that you have to actually stop trying to adjust material life, because after a while you see that it's not just a case of where you live and what kind of body you have and who's around you. It's actually like the whole thing is actually such a mess. There's no situation in the material world that will be comfortable and safe. It's always going to get uncomfortable. It's always going to be trouble. And even if everything looks really nice, and then you die anyway, so what was the point of that? So throughout history, people have understood after a little bit of thinking that, no, what I have to do is not just adjust things out here, but actually transcend, go beyond, end this whole package of material existence. So spiritual paths abound. And in the beginning, all these spiritual paths tend to be the same. In the beginning, they all have the same things, and they all work really well. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's Buddhism, if it's yoga, the different types of yoga. In the beginning, the pathway is the same. You just start reducing your attachments, and you start being a better person, better behavior, better thoughts, and you control your mind. And so naturally, you start experiencing this excellent result. It really works, and if you haven't tried it, you should try it. So it really works. You really notice right away, within the first months of serious practice, a marked improvement in your life, in your well-being. Everything starts getting better, and as you take it seriously, it gets really a lot better. And so naturally, different paths have just stopped at that, let's just stop suffering. So Nirvana, the term Nirvana means in Sanskrit without blowing, which means without agitation, without waves, without turbulence. Just means you just pacify everything. And by pacifying everything, then you naturally experience the bliss of existence, and etc. So there's that. But is there anything beyond Nirvana? So fascinatingly enough, in the yoga tradition, in its full presentation, there is actually a goal beyond Nirvana. And few spiritual paths and even religious people think about that. What happens afterwards? What happens after I get back to God? What happens after I attain liberation? What happens when I attain Nirvana? What then? We just what happens? And you just sit around, in what situation? And it's funny, we don't usually think about these things, but it's worth thinking about these things because it actually impacts and changes your life right now. And I'll show you why. Because some paths, some spiritual paths, it's quite common, especially in the West, but also in India and in the East. Many spiritual paths, what they say is, no, you're just going to cease existence. They say, look, existence is so much trouble. Just being a person is so much trouble all the time. The goal is just to not exist, basically. You just stop existing. And especially you stop existing as a person. Yeah, just enough of this being a person and emotions and decisions and desires. Let's just stop with the whole thing and having a body. Let's just quit the whole thing. So what they'll say is, different words they use for it, but they'll say you're just light. Or if you want to use a technical term in yoga, you're going to merge into the Brahman, the transcendent aura. Or you're just going to merge into the mind flow, different forms of Buddhism, just different words to say the same thing, that basically you're just kind of energy, and your energy will then join, merge into this greater sum total of energy mind flow, whatever term light you want to use. So a lot of paths tell you that. But yoga tells you something more interesting. What yoga says is like, no, wait a second, this is the biggest case of throwing away the baby with the bathwater. Because, okay, life is difficult, but we don't have to get so radical. I mean, think about it. Singing isn't so bad, and dancing and kissing and eating and, beautiful scenery and the sun and warmth and swimming. These things aren't so bad, and having a loving relationship, that's not bad. Having a great conversation and a good joke, holding hands. Hey, wait a second, those things aren't so bad. So what's really bad is doing those things, doing life with the wrong mentality. It's doing it badly. It's living badly. That's the problem. It's not life itself. We don't have to throw away the baby with the bathwater. It's not being alive. It's not thinking and feeling. Being a person, that's so bad. It's doing those things badly. That's what hurts you. When you do those things, well, like for example, instead of being loving, you're selfish, then you're going to hurt yourself. Instead of doing the right thing, you do the wrong thing, you're going to hurt yourself. Instead of helping, you hurt. Then that's just, you feel bad and the result's bad. That's when things get difficult. And of course, also being trapped in the material existence, that's not so good for the soul. Because you're like a spiritual being, you're an eternal spiritual being, and being trapped in a decaying, let's face it, in a decaying spiritual, in a decaying material body, it's not so pleasant. And being inside a material existence, full of other people trying to deal with their advancement and their issues, that's not so good. But yoga says, look, you're actually an eternal, loving person. Your nature, the true you, is an individual person. That's why you experience personality and everything. That's why the personal experience of life is what predominates existence. So thinking, feeling, deciding, these things are the real you. Matter doesn't think and feel. These rocks don't have any emotions. No decisions, no thoughts. This is just dark matter. This is just matter that's dead. And what happens right now is that you are this brilliant light of personhood, this individual spark of life, which is the soul, spark of divinity, but that's within a material machine, a machine made of matter, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. So this combination isn't so pleasant. Because you get stuck here, you're limited, it's painful, and then as you let matter seep into your identity, you act in ways which aren't so pleasant. So it's our identity with matter, with our body, selfishness, lust and greed, all these things that bring you towards neediness, and those things make life bad. But as you start removing those things which are not you, you start removing selfishness and ignorance and fear, as you start removing these things, you can start to live your real existence as an eternal spiritual person. So what yoga says, that beyond nirvana, the Krishna tradition gives all this information about what's going to happen beyond nirvana. It talks about an existence of everything that's good without the bad. So an existence, a realm where you do act, where you have all those good things, where you can swim and joke and walk and eat, but within an environment where you don't have matter, you're not bound by decaying matter. It's a different level of existence, this transcendental realm, and without all these things that are dragging us down and making our lives difficult right now. All these layers of selfishness and anger and lack of love, basically. All these things that we lack love in, those things make our life difficult. And more importantly, if you realize that you are an eternal person, you can then value your emotions. You can value your personal existence. You can see no, it's okay to be a person. It's okay to have feelings. I just have to do it well. I just have to perfect it. I just have to remove the dirt that's covering my heart. I have to remove those things which are making my life less enjoyable. And that's what yoga is. You start purifying your existence, living your life better and better every day, right here and now. Okay, this is the place to do it. This is how you train your purification. This is the best place for it. And once you understand you are this eternal loving person, then you can start thinking bigger, like, okay, so what is the source of all this reality? If I'm a person, and it's really like the who I am forever, eternally, and everybody else and every living being, what is the source of all this? Obviously, the source is going to have personality as well. So then we come to understand God as a person as well. And then you can understand, so the whole Krishna tradition gives all this information, philosophical and arguments and facts, to understand also that God is also a person. And then if God is this infinitely perfect person and you're a person, wow, what's going to happen when you two get together? What happens when you get to meet an infinitely lovable being who's going to reciprocate with your love infinitely well? I mean, what's that combination? It's going to be amazing, isn't it? It's going to be wonderful. So that's the call. That's Krishna's invitation, that you get to understand this infinite loving relationship that you naturally have. Now, of course, not only with God, but especially with God, and then also with all other purified living beings. So you can understand this love, and to love is perfection of life. It's much better than to just not suffer, to just exist. It's the activity of love, the action of love, the engagement, the variety of love. That's perfection of life. So it's very interesting to understand what goes beyond nirvana. And of course, these are very deep subjects. If you want to get to know more, check out my book, The 3T Path. There I explain in much more detail about the nature of the soul, the nature of God, and the relationships, and how you can understand the difference between this impersonal concept of life where you think everything is energy, and the personal concept of life where you understand your individual eternal personality. Hare Krishna.